The wayfinding landscape is changing, so welcome to Endpoint's Wayfinding Xchange Podcast. We want to connect with leading experts, tech innovators, and key contributors to exchange knowledge and innovation in physical and digital wayfinding. We want to shape the future of wayfinding through discussion, collaboration, and shared expertise. And this is why we have created this podcast series. Enjoy the episode.
So, hello again. Welcome back to the Wayfinding Xchange Podcast. Today we're here with Giles Rhys Jones, Chief Marketing Officer for What Three Words. Hello, Giles. Nice to see you again.
Thanks. Good to be back.
Very quickly, Giles, I'm sure you'll go into details, but you're Chief Marketing Officer. It says here that you were the 5th employee of What Three Words, so you're the right person to speak about the history and tech. I think we spoke back in 2020. We did an article with you, so it'd be really interesting to find out how business is going, what innovations have come along over the last few years, and also the backstory, just to remind people, because I think it's, for people who don't know What Three Words, and I'm going to butcher this, you'll be much better at explaining it than me. It's basically I call it a very easy to use global coordination system. It's basically put a grid mesh across the world at 3 meters square and has labelled each of those squares with 3 words. Yeah, which sounds really simple, but I'm sure you'll explain how difficult that actually is. And I think that simple idea, I think we'd like to explore today, just how people use that, where it's found its uses, because you've been around a few years now. Yeah. And just find out what the future is as well.
Yeah, so, sure. Thanks for having me on again. I think that, you described it perfectly. It's a simple way to talk about location. We've divided the world up into 3 meter squares. So there's 57 trillion 3 meter by 3 meter squares in the world.
Trillion?
And we've allocated each one of those squares a unique 3-word code. So a 3-word address to define any spot on the planet. Mm-hmm. So our office is particularly difficult to find. And actually, coming to this place today, the street address actually pointed around the corner on the other road. So it was a little frustrating for me, just kind of cycling around trying to find the right entrance to that spot. If I'm a delivery company and I'm a delivery driver and I'm doing that a couple of hundred times a day, that actually becomes quite an expensive thing, because you're losing time. If you're a first responder and there's been an accident and you can't quite find the right entrance to the building you're trying to get to, the implications can be far more serious. And so what we've done is we've taken GPS coordinates, latitude, longitude, which are incredibly accurate. They cover the world, and we convert them to 3 simple words. So the entrance to our office is filled count soap. Because interesting, if you put in the postcode for our office, it drops on the Westway, and no one can actually find us. So we add the What Three Words address to our contact pages, and if anybody's coming to visit, and they pop it into the app, and they can find exactly where to go.
Amazing. I mean, it is quite amazing. I remember you telling me, maybe you want to explain again, like the backstory and the guy.
Chris.
The guy's name.
So Chris, my friend, he used to organise music events around the world, and he was organising basically bands and equipment to arrive at the right spot. And he, whether he was trying to find gate 37B at the NEC Arena, or he was trying to find a chateau in remote France, he was constantly frustrated with street addresses. They just weren't accurate enough, or they just didn't exist. And so he's like, right, I'm going to use GPS coordinates. What could go wrong? And so write down a bit of paper, you give it to the roadie. 4 hours later, the roadie would phone up and said, I think I'm at the right place, but I'm not sure if I am. Or I mixed up a 1 and a 7 and I'm an hour north of Rome instead of an hour south of Rome. And so he sat down with a friend of his, Mohan, who was a mathematician, and he was bemoaning this fact. And they said, well, what happens if we've got a set of numbers. What happens if we add letters to that? And we can come up with a code, like an alphanumeric code, ANZ 421-3Y. And they're like, well, actually, that's not particularly elegant, and actually there's almost as many problems with that. What happens if we use words? How many words would we actually need? What size of squares would we need? And being mathematicians, they kind of sketched it out literally on the back of an envelope and went, 3 meters by 3 meters, that's small enough to be useful. If you go any smaller, there's too many. And they basically worked it out that 3 meters by 3 meters, a word list of 40,000 words, gives you enough unique combinations to address the entire planet. And pretty quickly after that, they were like, well, it's probably more useful than just getting band members to gigs on time. Actually, the implications are massive, because addressing impacts almost every aspect of our life. Every single day you're using an address. You're popping your home address into a checkout page, or you're hailing an Uber to pick you up at a particular spot. You're using it constantly. And yet somehow in this age when we've never been more connected than right now, and yet we accept the standing on the side of the street waving your phone at the Uber driver saying, no, I'm over here. Or you're in the taxi and you go, no, a little bit further, just on the left. No. It's strange that we've come to accept that. And so I joined the company. I met Chris in Westbourne Studios, and he told me about the system, and I wrote a kind of manifesto. I was like, this is going to make the world a better place. It's going to make it less frustrating. It's going to make it more efficient. It's going to make it safer. You know, we're on an absolute mission. I'd come from advertising. Advertising is my background, and kind of planner. So I wrote this and I sent it to him. And he sent it back with all of my spelling mistakes and grammar corrected. But I said, I think you've got something there, and you understand what we're trying to do. And actually, that's been the kind of ethos throughout the company ever since then. And we've grown from 5 people to 150 now in 4 countries, and we're still doing that. We're helping people find their mates at festivals and events. We are helping emergency services find people who are in trouble, and we're being used by delivery companies to be much more efficient and give a much better customer service kind of around the world. And it's grown from then. And even in the past few years since we last spoke, there's been massive growth and usage.
Such an amazing story. So that first back of a cigarette pack napkin, and that initial start of the company. So your friend who was doing the events, what was the initial impression? He's like, obviously it solves a bit of a problem for his day to day, but he's thought, okay, I'm going to set up a company.
He immediately dropped everything. Okay. He immediately dropped everything, sent a note to the other co-founder, Jack, and said, I know we used to know each other at school. I haven't spoken to you in a while, but I've got this idea. I know you're a bit of a linguist and you understand languages. I'm going to set up this company. Do you want to come in? And Jack did. The linguist part is important because we are now in 60 languages. So we've addressed the entire planet in 60 languages. So every single square has got a unique what 3 words address in 60 languages. So you can talk about anywhere in your own language, in the language that you speak.
They're not translations, they're unique.
No, there's a few things that we do with the system. So we've put shorter, more memorable words in places that speak that language, densely populated. So here in the UK, we've got lots of shorter English words, more common English words. If you went out into the middle of the Atlantic, you'd find words like, I don't know, discombobulated narcissistic umbrella, because they're less used very often. Exactly. Yeah. And we do that distribution for different languages. So in France, there would be better French words, or shorter, more memorable, more common French words. And then we've put similar sounding words quite far apart. And this is super important. So table chair lamp is in New York. Table chair damp is in Australia. So if you make a slight error, it's very, very, very obvious.
Yeah.
If you make a slight error with a postcode or a GPS coordinate, you could be a mile out. But actually that's significant because you don't know you're a mile out. Whereas with what 3 words, it's a different continent, or it's 50 miles away. So it's a significant error detection system. And that's one of the reasons why it's a unique system. It's got error detection built in that will spot the slight error. And the app, which is free, anybody can download the app, will suggest things based on where you are and how badly you misspelled or miscommunicated the word. It will say, I think you meant table chair lamp because you're 5 miles away.
Okay.
So it will correct
Smart.
it. Yeah.
So you dropped everything, set this company up. That was, what did you say, 2013?
About 9 years ago. 10 years ago. Yep.
And obviously you're 150 people now, pretty well established. I noticed you did a proper TV ad campaign.
I did,
a little while ago. It's like, wow, this is amazing. Brilliant. Did you see things peak then?
Yes, for sure. So the journey from a marketing point of view has been an interesting one. I think that in the UK, we've gone from a system which was ambitious innovators, early adopters who are like, kind of into my tech. This is kind of cool. It's elegant. I like it. I like telling my friends about it because they might not know about it and they'll think I'm cool. So we've gone from that to almost kind of household name. You know, you talk to many people on the street, 3/4 of the population are aware of what 3 words. And actually it's interesting. I was reading an article the other day in the Guardian, and what 3 words has become sort of a byword for precision. So the woman in the article was responding to a fairly ambiguous comment. She was like, I don't want to be all what 3 words about it. But actually, I think the precise definition is this. That was totally blew my mind. And then the other thing I read the other day was, Harry and Meghan's new business. I think it's called America Riviera, something or other. Yeah. And I think when I was on the show last time, I said, look, one of our ambitions for the company is you see 3 words and you go, that's an address. You see it on a building, you kind of read it on a contact page, you go, that's an address. Loads of journalists from the Mail to the FT to the Times were like, America Riviera, blah, that looks like a what 3 words address. I wonder if it's a what 3 words address. We saw a massive spike in people searching for that. It's not a word. It's not in our word list. But it's amazing that people just see 3 words and go, I wonder if that's what 3 words. Yeah. And you start to kind of see that everywhere. So yeah, we've become a pretty established name now in the UK, which is significant. And people are just downloading our app and using it at festivals and events. They're adding what 3 words to their contact pages if they're difficult to find. We discovered the London Marathon were using us for coordinating people after the event. We were used at South by Southwest in America. At Burning Man, we saw a huge spike of activity in the desert. We were like, wonder what that is. You zoom in and you actually see all the points that people are using. And you discover all these particular kind of use cases. But yes, we did some TV in the UK. Yeah.
And the use cases, I mean, 9 years ago, for me, when I first heard about this, it's like, this is amazing, going to change the world. We don't need this, we don't need that. I mean, from the original kind of blue sky thinking, what possibilities this could open up, and where you are today, has it changed path of?
I think possibly a little bit, but generally around timing and when people were ready to kind of do that. So we did spend quite a lot of time talking to postal services, for example, in various different places and parts of the world that were incredibly badly addressed. But it turns out they didn't really have the mobile penetration or the infrastructure to support our sort of system. But actually now we're seeing them becoming much more amenable to it because we've kind of moved through that process.
So like a Netflix, we'll set up a streaming service, but the internet can't handle it. We have to wait.
So there's a lot of this around timing. And actually now in the UK, DPD, DHL, Every, Yodel will all accept what 3 words and deliver to them, which is phenomenal. And so we've had some kind of twists and turns on the path, trying to understand the right product market fit at the right time. But as you say, like the applications are absolutely everywhere. One of the challenges we have as a business is where to focus. I think last time we spoke, I think we had Mercedes as one of the cars that we're enabled in. So you can get into a Mercedes, any new Mercedes, say, take me to Index Home Raft, and it goes, okay. Now, if you've ever tried to put an address into a car, it's frustrating, really frustrating, because you start with postcode and then you like whatever, or you try to do GPS coordinates is a disaster. Trying to do that by voice is really challenging. The chairman of Mercedes, we met him, we started talking to him about what 3 words, and before we'd finished our sentence, he was like, I get it, got it, understand it. Such a good customer experience. I want it in. 6 months later, we were in the cars, which was phenomenal. But then since then, we've added Jaguar, Land Rover, Mitsubishi, Subaru, Lotus, Lamborghini. You can get into all of those cars and use what 3 words in there. And so cars was a very big focus for us. We've got small resources,
and
although
probably
we're 150.
One of those that you didn't even consider back in 2013.
Yeah, and the other one we didn't really consider, and this is emergency services, because we kind of made the assumption that if you phone up emergency services, they know where you are. They are like, surely they can connect that and go, oh yeah, I know, but they can't. Actually, in most circumstances, they don't know where you are, and most emergencies happen not at home, and so you haven't got an address, and we didn't anticipate that. But we've seen massive growth in emergency services. We took a decision. A part of my initial kind of manifesto was around doing good by doing business. And so we don't actually charge emergency services for using the system. We've created a bunch of plugins. We've been integrated into their dispatch software. We even provide marketing materials for them to tell the public about what 3 words, because we believe it's the right thing to do. If you're a delivery company and I can save you 10 million quid a week by getting you 20 yards closer on 100 deliveries a day with 10,000 delivery drivers, I'm going to charge you an appropriate. I'm going to charge you an appropriate fee. If you're an NGO, if you're a charity, if you're doing good, if you're installing solar meters in the slums in India, for example, where we're used, we don't charge you to do that.
And there's no. I mean, I downloaded the app. Well, I've had that app downloaded.
I'd hope so. Yeah,
but it's there's no advertising, there's no charging there.
Nope.
I was playing with it last night in preparation for this, and I think people need to understand that the app is not, it's not really a navigation app, is it? It's to generate three words.
Correct, yes.
And then
you hand off.
Yeah.
Yeah, the intention was not to become a mapping service or to become a navigation service. And in fact, in the future, our app may not exist.
Okay.
Because actually what we want to do is we want to get built into everybody else's system. So you can go into Addison Lee, type in a what three words address and it will understand it. In Korea, Kakao Maps is basically the Google Maps of Korea. It's called Kakao Maps, and we've been built into that. So in Korea, you don't need our app. People don't need it. They just use, they press on the map in Kakao Maps and it'll pop up a what three words address, or they can type it into the search bar. And so that's the intention, is that our system is built into everything else rather than our app. But yes, you're right. Our app is free. Anybody can download and use it. We've got a free website anybody can download and use. I would warn you though, I don't know how long you spent on the app, but you tend to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole of like, I wonder what that one is. And like you go around your house, it's a bit like horoscopes. People push meaning into these things. They're like, how did you know? I don't want to know what your ones are.
Trying to find the best three words that, you got 3 meters. I mean,
you've got quite a few around the house.
Tiny, so you can choose the most appropriate. And
people either go, look, I'm going to choose my carport, I'm going to choose the turn off to my road, or I'm going to do multiple, or I'm going to just find something that kind of feels right for me. And then the other thing that we saw is there's a whole kind of cottage industry blown up around what three words merchandise. So you go onto Etsy and you type in what three words, you can find dog collars, you can find welcome doormats, you can find signs, people are doing artworks with it.
So if the dog's lost, he
knows where to go. Actually, there was a public safety campaign in Belgium, I think, where they gave kids wristbands on the beach, and the parents would write the what three words address of where they were for the day, and if the kids got lost, they would find their way back, so they could go to someone and say, this is where I want to go.
It reminds me of, I don't know, I read the story of, I might be making this up, Edison. It's kind of like a utility. You've created this grid with all the three words. I mean, if there's trillions of squares, that's a lot of combinations of words. So, but it's like this utility. It's like, well, it's a bit like Edison with electricity. It's like we've got this thing called electricity. It's brilliant. It's going to change the world. But man on the street's like, I've got a coal fire, what do I want electricity? So then he had to go around inventing light bulbs, electric motors, so people adopt electricity
to use it.
Exactly.
I think the intention is that we become infrastructure. We become a standard, I guess, a standard for communicating location. So you type it into a search bar, you speak it to a voice assistant, put it on your business cards and contact pages, and people go, okay, got it. And to be honest, we're sort of seeing that. So one of the best moments, maybe this is 5-6 years ago, was someone was reporting a broken pothole or a water main had broken. And they tweeted, X'd at Thames Water saying, there's a broken water main at word. I think they even put our slashes in. Thames Water went, great, thanks for the what three words address. And that was like a real moment, because normally when you go into, 4 or 5 years ago, when you go into meetings or you mention what three words, you have to explain. You have to explain the system. And we got to a point there where you had Joe Public and a large company having a chat about what three words without even talking about the system, without just going like, this is useful. We're seeing that more and more. You go onto social media and you search for what three words, and we see it all the time. People are just, it's got into kind of pop culture, the psyche.
So, in terms of, the revenue models, way off topic in a way. So again, free for consumers, free for
good.
For good. 150 people, you're obviously having to generate revenue somewhere. So is that through licensing the data, or
so it's basically it's an API, or you can get the SK, but basically it's a piece of software, and our software converts the GPS coordinates to words and words to coordinates. And so if you wanted to build what three words into your car, we would charge you per car to do that. If you wanted to build it into your taxi app, we would charge you to do that. Now, the thing is, this is nothing new. If you're a taxi app, someone types in a street address, that goes and validates that. It goes and checks that against a database. Now, there's a few companies around the world that own databases of addresses, Google being one. So it'll check it with Google. Google will say, this address is this GPS coordinate. Here's the pin on the map. You can now go and pick up that person. It's called geocoding. And we do exactly the same thing. It's just Google and others use street addresses. We use three-word addresses, which are more accurate and kind of better value. I think we did a survey in the UK, and we discovered that I think 70% of the UK population said their home address didn't lead to their front door. Yeah, and in city centres, that's okay-ish. As soon as you get into rural parts of the UK, the majority of which the UK is rural, actually that becomes pretty problematic. So street address and postcode become less and less useful. So yes, we license our software to delivery companies, to taxi companies, mobility companies, delivery companies, postal services, anybody who needs to know where something is or where people are. It also doesn't cost anything to put a what three words address in a book. So there's DK Guides, guidebook, Dorling Kindersley. They produced a whole series of guidebooks to various cities around the world. Every single one has got the what three words address of the bar, the restaurant, the hotel, the tourist attraction. So I've got a guide to Tokyo. And you go in there, I've got no idea what the street names are. I don't even have those characters on my phone. And yeah, I can put in the what three words address and go to that spot.
I like that.
And that doesn't cost anything. It's just listing a what three words address.
Wow. So, I mean, we work in the Middle East and Asia, and I think it surprises people from here, especially when we explain that actually quite a few countries in the world don't have postcodes, addresses, street names.
We are incredibly lucky in the UK. Yeah. We have one of the best systems in the world. It's one of the best address countries in the world, and yet still. So for those, I struggle to get to this studio today because this is in the middle of London. Yeah.
So as I guess GPS infrastructure increases in these developing parts of the world, it's a bit like telephones. So I forget who it was with, mobile phones. And it's like, well, a lot of rural towns in Africa, they've skipped.
Yes, fixed
lines have gone straight to.
Yeah.
This feels a bit like that. It's like, well, we're going to skip street addresses and that. We'll go straight to.
To put in a street address system is incredibly expensive and time consuming. It takes, I think Ireland just introduced air codes about 4 or 5 years ago. I think it cost them 32 million to put in and took 10 years. And then they've only addressed the buildings. And so actually in one of the air code apps, they say, I'm sorry, there's not an air code here. Would you like the what three words address instead? Which is cheaper and faster. So yes, we're pretty big in the Middle East. One of our investors actually is a company called Aramex. They're a very large delivery company in the Middle East and Africa. They actually ran a test. They did street addresses versus what three words addresses in Dubai, and I think it was a 32% time saving. And actually,
I'm surprised it's that small, to be honest.
Well, normally what they would do is they would often put you put your telephone number on the package and you get a phone call from the driver going, where are you? Can you kind of talk me into where you're going? And so developing parts of the world, yes, often are skipping over street addresses and using what three words. India, Middle East, parts of Asia are all adopting what three words at different paces. Yeah.
You mentioned before we come in, I presume we can mention it. So you said you got a little team in Mongolia.
Yes. And
you were mentioning that was like the first sort of.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. We were lucky enough to get invited to the World Economic Forum the summer one, and because of the system, they saw the power of a system like this. And whilst we were there, Chris met with a gentleman who worked with government and had a partial stake in the post office, and he said, look, I think this is an amazing system. So we flew out to Mongolia. We developed a Mongolian version of what three words. So you've got what three words in Mongolian. The postal service adopted it. It's been adopted by banks there. If you want to get a credit card, you can put your what three words address and it will arrive. Because as you can probably imagine, it's a vast country, fairly sparsely populated. It's got a pretty good addressing system in Ulaanbaatar, but if you go out into the kind of informal settlements around it, it's less good. And so emergency services there use us, the postal service use us, the banks use us. Get pizza delivered to a what three words address in Mongolia. And so we went there and discovered a incredibly intelligent, hardworking population with very good English speaking skills. And so we've set up a team there of sales and marketing to do that. So we're a kind of truly global company. We've got tech resources in Vietnam, another big market for us. VinFast is the biggest Vietnamese car manufacturer. They've built what three words in. And then we've got a team in Trinidad and Tobago, again, well-educated, great English speaking, and they service our US clients, where we're starting to make a big impact actually in the US. Emergency services are leading that, but we just had LA Football Club just added what three words addresses to all of their entrances and exits around the stadium. The LA Coliseum as well use what three words as well. Because if you imagine going to a football match, you've got 20, 30, 40,000 people going all at the same place. You want to meet someone for what they call it in America, tailgate party. Where are you? So
it's definitely something we're increasingly including in our own wayfinding strategies for clients. A lot of our projects are indoor, which again is kind of fine for what 3 words on a level. Obviously, multiple levels.
Yeah, the challenge with the challenge I think is GPS. So we work off a GPS signal, and GPS is pretty universal, but you broadly need to see the sky for it to work accurately. So we do work indoors, but it's not particularly accurate. So in those sort of circumstances, it's entrances, exits, drop-off points, emergency rally points, those sorts of things.
For us, that's the modern challenge. It's like you can use a lot of tech to get you to a building or a place. There's a lot of tech that'll get you around the building, but it kind of becomes very local. It's actually quite expensive. So traditional analog type signs, other cues, there's still a place for them.
For sure. Nothing beats a good map.
A good map, a misplaced road sign. No, let's not go there. So you're going great guns, you're 150 people, and you talked about this idea of utility. What deal do you need to do to truly to yourself go, we've kind of
tick.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I noticed obviously Google Maps is the go-to kind of map
default
app.
Yeah.
And last night fiddling, your app slides very easily into that in terms of...
so you can find a what 3 words address, you can press navigate, you can send it to Google Maps or Apple Maps or kind of whatever you want. At that point, it turns it back into GPS coordinates, which Google Maps loves, and kind of away you go. But yes, the intention is, and we are speaking to all of the players that you would imagine, from the mapping world to the car world to the big kind of e-com and retailers as well. So plenty of them are aware of the system.
And what's their resistance? Is it just they've got their own thing that they're working on, they don't want to pay the license, or what's the feedback you get?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think that there is always a little bit of resistance to new. I think it's a bit of kind of human nature to go like, why are you, I mean, one of the things is like, why are you trying to replace street addresses? It's like, we're not, we're a tool. Just like you've got many tools for helping people wayfind around a venue or whatever. You can go or a map here or this there, a tech there or whatever. It's the same with emergency services. It's the same with delivery companies. You have a street address that works, perfect. If it's not quite accurate enough or it doesn't exist, use a kind of what 3 words.
An environment without an address. There's a lot of those.
It helps. And people are like, what's wrong with a WhatsApp pin? And you're like, well, that's good, but if you want to tell that to your car, it's difficult. Or if you want to write that down on a package, it's difficult. And so it works in a certain circumstance. So I think there's a little bit of just human nature resistance to a new idea. And then there's just companies are large and move slowly. I mean, we were so impressed by Mercedes and the speed at which they integrated what 3 words. And we thought, that's amazing. And then
all gonna be like
and then I won't name another car company, but that was 4 years later, from start to actually being in a vehicle. Everybody moves at a slightly different pace. And we're a kind of scale up startup mentality, which is move fast, and trying to reconcile that with speeds of other companies is a bit challenging. But yes, we're talking to all the people that you would imagine, and like overall, we are on a mission to change the world. We want to be seen as the default or as a way of communicating location, and by dint of that, we need to be in everywhere that you would use an address. We would. So
is the strategy at the moment geographical in terms of expansion into other?
Yeah, for sure. I think as you mentioned earlier, the uses of what 3 words are phenomenal. We've got to be really focused about where we spend our time and effort and money and resource. Yeah. The UK has got to a point where we did some TV advertising. We stopped it. We stopped all advertising in the UK, and we continue to see our numbers grow. Okay. So it feels like that's I don't whisper it, tipping point, but that's a moment in time where you're like, actually we're not, and that's attractive investors to go, wow, okay, you've got to that point. Now the challenge is to replicate that in other markets, and so Germany is particularly important to us. The US is important to us, but the US is massive, and so you've got to be very select about where you spend your resources, and it's the same with the verticals as well. So cars and delivery are big ones for us. But everything from infrastructure to events to other things. So we've got to make a lot of hard choices about where we focus.
And what about if people come to you? So again, I'm just thinking about our own world here and being a little bit selfish. We're working on a few stadiums. You mentioned stadiums, for instance. So you're
going to name a stadium with a what 3 words address of
not on air. But no, I'm just thinking, obviously signage does a job. They're in the UK, so addresses, road name, do a job. But, these are club brands, they're big names. They all got their own apps. They're all using their own infrastructure to communicate with fans and blah, blah, blah. If they wanted to build in what 3 words into their app, into their physical infrastructure, how do you do that?
Pretty simple. Yeah. I mean, there's a number of different ways that stadiums or events can use what 3 words. I think the simplest one is to just list the what 3 words addresses of key points around the stadium. So if you go to the O2 or you go to West Ham Stadium, you go to their contact page, they've listed ticket offices, concessions, loos, entrances, everything, all the what 3 words addresses. So people can just really simply kind of find their way around. Others, say Winter Wonderland, printed big physical maps, posters, and they had the what 3 words addresses of all the key points, and so people could go in there and they type it in or even scan it, and it would pop up the location. The other thing to use it for is, this is how Glastonbury used us, was for setup and breakdown. Yeah. So you're coordinating lots of people and equipment coming to this spot. Glastonbury, basically a massive field, and so they used us for that sort of stuff. Others have used us for fan engagement. So we've had lots of treasure hunts for gig tickets, solve the riddle, find the clue, get this thing. So we've been used a lot for kind of fan engagement, and then the emergency use case as well. But if people wanted to actually build us into the app, we've got a very simple API which people can sign up for on the website and plug it straight into their app. Okay. So yes, there's physical, there's digital, there's integrated into app, and there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with people. So do you know Imagine Dragons band? Their album called Evolve. If you actually zoom in, like this is their like multi-platinum album. You zoom into the album cover, at the bottom they've just got a jumble of letters, and everybody was like, what's that? And someone's like, I think that's a what 3 words address. And they rearranged all the letters, and someone finally got the right combination, pointed to a spot in the desert in Idaho or somewhere. Someone drove there, dug up this 3-meter square, and there was a guitar, there was merchandise, there was tickets, our Twitter feed absolutely blew up, and we were like, what is going on? And they're just taking it upon themselves to do that. And we've had a few other kind of bands do that sort of stuff since.
Amazing. Must be some good ideas for future marketing.
Yeah, for sure. We've I think there's a beer called, Brewdog did a beer, and they named it after the what 3 words address of their brewery in Elon. There's a beer in America called Fear Movie Lions, which is the what 3 words address of their brewery. So it was one of the most searched 3-word addresses a couple of years ago, because people were looking at it going, oh, Fear, I wonder where that, and there was a little description on the back of the can about the system and why they liked it, and people were searching for it.
So you talked a bit about seeing spikes in the desert for the are you got back-end guys that are constantly looking through this data?
We're aware of the data. I mean, it's important to point out it's not a tracking tool, so we can't connect anybody with locations, and we don't really hold any data, but we understand how kind of where we're being used. Clients can get the SDK and they can run everything on their own servers. Some of the police do that. They host what 3 words on their own, and we don't see any of that data. That's all of their own stuff. But yes, you see slightly random spikes happening. We've been used in a few TV shows. So NCIS Los Angeles used us. We got a script through, and I was like, that's LL Cool J. And one of the team members gets captured. They find her notebook. In her notebook, there's 3 words circled in invisible ink. They're like, what is this thing? And then someone at the back of the room goes, that's what 3 words. They type it into the system. I'm like, it was an amazing experience.
Part of the cultural.
Yeah, which is phenomenal. And there was a British Transport Police officer who watched that show. This is a few years ago, and was like, I wonder if that's actually a thing. Went to the App Store, found it, started using it, told his mates about it. And basically that kind of grew our police presence, because this one guy watched this show. That's a lot of the stuff that we do in the marketing team is around creating serendipity, to kind of create those moments. And so that's why we'll entertain these mad things like treasure hunts or beers or TV shows, because you never quite know when someone might come across that, and that's important. We're aware we don't want to focus all our time on that sort of stuff, but when it comes along, we play.
You have mentioned, and I can imagine it, so many like you say, applications, opportunities, areas of interest. Yeah. How do you focus your attention?
I think as a company, as a business, commercial's got to be pretty high up there because, and this particularly applies to a lot of the for good stuff that we do, because you have to be in business to be able to do good.
Yeah.
And I think everybody at the company kind of understands that that's the right thing to do. And so there's a mixture of short-term revenue, long-term potential revenue, recurring revenue, and we look at markets and verticals and different prospects and make that call. Yeah, and it's kind of fairly fluid, but seems to be working in the right way for us at the moment.
Yeah. Brilliant. I mean, I was trying to end these on looking to the future, and not necessarily the future of what 3 words, but you're in this interesting arena of tech, of navigation, of location. Is there another what 3 words around the corner?
What 4 words are the
what 2 words?
I think it's really important to remember that this is a tool and a means to an end. And interestingly, in our marketing and our communication and the way we talk about it, we rarely focus on the tech. We actually focus on what that enables. And what people want is great experiences. They don't want frustration. They want to be safe. It's all about the benefit that we enable through more precise addressing. And I think that's the important thing to remember. And I think that translates into many other industries and many other kind of tech applications, whether it's AI or all the technology that you're putting into wayfinding. All of that is so you can create a brilliant customer experience.
Yeah.
And I think we're in that same sort of business, which is removing frustration, creating good experiences, helping people be safer and more efficient. So that's the kind of focus for us.
I think that's maybe it is a place to end, because for us, we're all about, we talk about creating better experiences. And it is one of the frustrations we have with what are called tech companies, because there's clients are clamoring for, we want digital this, we want that, we want digital navigation. And it's like, okay, there's a lot.
Is that actually going to give you a better experience? Well, or are you just chasing the football in the playground? When
we often get into the detail, it's like we're dealing with very smart companies that really do just focus on the tech. It's not, actually, I understand 98% of what you're talking about. What's it going to be like when there's a person stuck with bad mobile phone connection? How's it? And all of a sudden,
the thing you're trying to deliver a better experience actually turns into a much worse experience.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll speak again. Thank you so much for your time. If anyone's interested, got that killer idea that's going to unleash more wonderful experiences with what 3 words, get in touch with Giles.
Looking forward to hearing from people.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our latest Wayfinding Xchange podcast. Stay tuned for further episodes and feel free to contact us with any questions and suggestions for future episodes.